I'm going to show you a very easy way to solve a quadratic equation. I wrote down 5 random examples and I haven't solved these 5. I don't know the solutions, but I'll solve them here for you and you will see how easy it is. Then I'll explain the method, how the method works, and the explanation of the method, why the method works. So here's the first one. I picked x squared plus 8x minus 7 equals 0. Now before I do this one, if you're not very familiar with the quadratic equation, you should know that x is an unknown here and we're trying to find a number for x that will make this equation true, right? What would be the number that I plug in here that will make this equation true? And a quadratic equation always has 2 solutions. Now those 2 solutions could be equal, could be the same, but we always have 2 solutions. So here it goes. So I see here that this is going to be -4 plus or minus square root of 23. That's it. Those are the 2 solutions. -4 plus square root of 23, -4 minus square root of 23. Now let's check. I know many of you are familiar with the quadratic formula, so let's test that. So the quadratic formula is given by -b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a, right? And then we plug these numbers. So a here is 1 because it's the coefficient of x squared, 8 is the coefficient of x, and -7, that would be c. So a, b, and c. So this would be -8 plus or minus 8 squared, right, which would be 64, minus 4 times 1 times c, which is -7, all divided by 2 times a is 1, and then this would be -8 plus or minus square root of 64 minus plus 28, right? So that would be 92, and this is divided by 2, and then finally -8 plus or minus, if you notice here, this is 4 times 23, so this is square root of 4 times 23, and this is divided by 2, so -8 divided by 2 is -4, and then square root of 4 is 2, divided by 2 cancel, so this is square root of 23. So that's exactly the solution that we got here. So all of that work was unnecessary because you can look at the equation and get this straight from the equation, and I'll show you how to do that later. So let me show you another example. Here is another random example. This one is x squared plus 10x plus 20 equals 0. Okay, all right. What is the solution here? Well, I can see that this is going to be -5 plus or minus square root, and this would be 25 square root of 5. So that's the solution. And we can test that, and you will see that that is the solution. So let's do this real quick here. Now I'm going to use the quadratic formula very fast. So this would be -10 plus or minus 10 squared, which is 100, minus 4 times a times c divided by 2 times a. This would be -10 plus or minus, okay, this is 100 minus 80, so it's 20 divided by 2. This will be -5 plus or minus, notice that this is 4 times 5, 20 is 4 times 5, so you have a square root of 4, which is 2 divided by 2, cancels out, and you get the square root of 5 there. All right, here's another one. And this is x squared minus 6x minus 11 equals 0. All right, so what is the solution here? And remember, I haven't tried this before, so this particular example, so I can look and I can see right away that this is going to be 3 plus or minus square root of 20. And that's a solution. Yeah, so you can simplify the 20 here as 4 times 5, right? The square root of 4 is 2. 2 times square root of 5. So if you can simplify, so this would be 2 square root of 5. But the cool thing is that you can get the solution right away, and then you can do some simplifications of the solution if you want. All right, so I won't check the answers for this one through the quadratic formula, but you can do that if you want. So let me do another one here, and I selected x squared plus, well, actually it's negative. It doesn't matter. It could be plus or minus 12. It doesn't make any more difficult. But I chose negative 12 plus 31. If you want, we can do the plus 12 here. That's fine. All right, so here's a solution. So I can see this will be 6 plus or minus, and this would be square root of 5. All right, what if I had a plus here? Well, let's do that, since I originally put a plus and I put a negative there, but no problem. We can do that with a plus. All right, I can see that this is going to be negative 6 plus or minus, and then this is also square root of 5. So negative 6 plus or minus square root of 5. And then finally, I have another one here. Here is x squared minus 2x plus 91. So it's a big number here. Doesn't matter. It's also easy. So I can see that the solution would be 1 plus or minus square root of negative 90. Yes, square root of a negative number. So this will be, you can do some simplification now. This would be an imaginary number here. So this would be square root of 90 I. Let me create here another one from the top of my head here. Let's say, I don't know, I pick x squared, I don't know, minus, I don't know, minus 8x plus 31. Well, it's almost like this one here, right? Okay, let's see what this is. This would be 4 plus or minus, and this would be, okay, so this would be 16 minus 31. So this would be negative 15. And that's it. Well, we can simplify that to 4 plus or minus square root of 15 I. Now let me explain how this method works. You probably notice in these examples that the coefficient of x squared is 1. And there's a reason for that. The method works when the coefficient of x squared is 1. If you have a quadratic equation where the coefficient of x squared is not 1, that's not a problem. You can divide the quadratic equation by that number to make it 1. For example, here I have 3 here, as a coefficient of x squared. So you can divide both sides of this equation by 3, and you will get x squared plus 3x minus 4 equals 0. And then you can work with this one. So let me explain how the method works. First, I pick this number, the coefficient b, right? The coefficient of x, it's called b. And I divide that coefficient by 2. And that's why you see the 4 here. But I put the opposite of that result. So divide this by 2, that gives me 4. And then I put a negative, that gives me a negative 4. So the method, you take the b, starts with taking b, dividing by 2, and then putting a negative, or making the opposite of that result. And then always do plus or minus and then the square root. So it's always like that. Now what do I put inside the square root? Whatever this number is, I'm going to square it. So negative b over 2 squared. So in this case, if you look here, I took the negative 4 and I square it, which is 16. Negative 4 squared is 16. And then take that 16 and subtract the next coefficient, which is a c. So 16 minus negative 7, which is 16 plus 7, and that gives me 23. So you take this number, negative b over 2, square it, and then subtract that coefficient c. And that's the formula. Now, you notice that, you may notice that this is actually the quadratic formula in disguise, right? And you don't see the coefficient a because the coefficient a is 1. So this is exactly the quadratic formula when a is equal to 1. And you can check on that, and you will see, if you look here, if you make a equals 1, this will be exactly this one if you do some simplification there. Let's look at the next example. So here, I took the 10, the number 10, divide by 2, that gives me 5, and then put it opposite, or put a negative sign there, and then plus or minus the square root. Now what do I put inside the square root? Take this number and I square, it's 25, minus 20, that gives me 5. So it's very quick and easy. So here is the next one. And same thing, take the negative 6, divide by 2, that gives me negative 3, but I put a negative sign, so that gives me 3, positive 3, right? So negative 3 with a negative sign, then negative 3 becomes positive 3. Then I square 3, and that will give me 9. 9 minus negative 11, which is 9 plus 11. That gives me 20. So here is the solution. And of course, I was able to simplify it a little bit more. So in many of these solutions, you can simplify it further, but at least you got the initial solution, and you can do some simplification if it's possible. And here's the second thing that you may have noticed in some of these examples, or in all of these examples, is that the coefficient b that I use in my examples, that are all even. And I did that for a reason, because it's easier, right? And the first step of the method is to divide b by 2. And if it's even, when you divide by 2, you get a nice number. But the method works when it's not even. So let's do one example. And this one here is a classic example, when we teach students on how to solve quadratic equations. We usually start with that method of factoring, right? We try to find two numbers. So one number here, and then one number here. try to find these two numbers, unknowns, that where the sum is 5 and the multiplication is 6. And then with some trial and error, you can see that it's going to be 2 and 3, right? 2 plus 3 is 5, and 2 times 3 is 6. Well, this is easy because this is an easy example. You can do that very easily, and the students can figure that out with a little bit of effort. And of course, then the solution here will be -2 and -3. Now, if we use our method, let's see what happens. And because the coefficient b is not even, then that gives us a little bit more work, because we take this and divide. So here's a solution. It's 5/2, because divided by 2, opposite, so it's going to be -5/2, plus or minus the square root. Now what do we put inside the square root? We square this number, which is 25/4, minus, and then coefficient c, which is 6. And these are the solutions, the two solutions. Now, it requires a little bit of simplification, so you can get the -2 and -3 here. So a little bit of work we can do here to get 25/4. This would be 25/4 minus, and finding the common denominator here, that's going to be 24/4. So we multiply top and bottom by 4, and then finally this is -5/2 plus or minus 25 minus 24 is 1/4. Square root of 1/4 is 1/2, and that's how you get the two solutions. One is -5 plus 1, which is -4 divided by 2, -2, and -5 minus 1 is -6 divided by 2, -3. So a little bit more work here. You may say, yeah, this was much easier. Yes, I agree, but still the method is pretty quick. You don't have to guess. You don't have to guess, do trial and error to estimate these two numbers, because you can simply divide this by 2, take the opposite, square it, subtract c, and that is the solution. You can quickly get the solution of the quadratic equation this way, and then do some simplification. Here's another example, and of course this is very, very easy. You don't even need any formula. The solution is 4 and -4. Forget the square. So the coefficient of x is hiding, which is 0, right? So it's not showing up here. So 0 divided by 2 is 0. Put a negative, still 0. Plus or minus, and then 0 squared minus -16, right? And that's plus or minus square root of 16 is 4. So I just apply the method just to show you how it works. Now, you can also apply this to equations where the coefficient of x squared is not 1. And let me pick one example here. This is 3x squared plus, I'll put minus here. It doesn't matter, again, but I'll just use that. So how do we apply the method? First, we divide by 3 to get rid of that coefficient 3, so we can have 1 here. So it's -5/3 plus 2/3. So we work with fraction, but no problem. We can get the answers right away. Take this number here, b, divide by 2. So that would be 5, 6 negative, right? But when you put the negative, it becomes positive, right? And then plus or minus square root. We square this number, which is 25 over 36 minus 2/3. And that's the answer. These are the two solutions. And of course, we can simplify this a little bit more. 5, 6. All right, 25 over 36 here. Multiply top and bottom by 12. 24 over 36. 5, 6 plus or minus. This would be 1 over 36, so this will be 1 over 6. Right, square root of 1 over 36, 1, 6. And then 5 plus 1 over 6, that's 1. And 5 minus 1 is 4 over 6. That's 2/3. So those are the two solutions.